Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Wednesday, October the 7th, 2015, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure of welcoming back Mr. Gerald Celente, who is the world's foremost forecaster of future trends. And you can find all of Mr. Celente's work at trendsresearch.com. How you doing today, Gerald?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, I wanted to just dive right into this whole Russia, Syria, Obama, Putin mess that's going on. And now that the U.S. military-industrial complex charade is exposed as the fraud and terrorist organization that it is, what else with the bombing of a hospital, while Russia is 100% focused on ISIS targets? What else, from your perspective, Gerald, will be exposed, and what do you make of what's actually happening in Syria right now?
This is a big event, and it's really a turning point event. We're going to be writing more about it in the upcoming Fall Trends Journal. And here's what happened, Rory. You really nailed it. A lot has been exposed. Again, it's not a question of being for or against something. We're political atheists. We look at things the way they are, not the way we want them to be. So we just do analysis of information. And the fact of the matter is that the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, they are just another example of failed government agencies, from the EPA to the FDA to the DOD, go up and down the list. One failed agency after another. Can anyone tell me the great successes that America has had with its Afghan and Middle East policies? Just name me the successes. No, the world is not better off without Saddam Hussein. The place is in chaos. The Americans killed over 1 million people there, and we spent between the two wars, according to Stiglitz and others, in excess of $6 trillion just for those two wars. And the price tag keeps going up. So now what happened with Syria, remember the $500 million scam to train, quote, moderate rebels. And by the way, they keep throwing out that two-bit term that what is a moderate rebel and who are they?
Exactly.
Who are they? Could anybody show them to me rather than them shooting their fat mouths off and talking about it? Who are they? What do they stand for? Where are they from? No, we're not allowed to see that because this is America with a K. And the transparency that the transparent fraud of a president promised us, we've got none of that. So now we're supporting people that we don't even know who they are. We're destabilizing a country just like they did with Libya, the Nobel Peace Prize winner. How about piece of crap? Because that's what the Nobel Peace Prize is, and that's who they give it out to. Look what they did to Libya. We got to get rid of Gaddafi. Oh, yeah, he did a great job. He got rid of a guy that had the richest country in Africa, and they kept refugees from going into Europe. Did a great job in destabilizing the joint. Going back to what's going on in Syria, the same thing. They're causing destabilization. Assad has to go. Anybody, any president, any politician that says a leader of another country has to go is a traitor to this country and the Constitution. Who are they to say who should go? Who made this stuff up? Hey, Jack, you want to take him out? Go take him out. Be a man about it. No, you mean you're going to send other people to go do your dirty work and you could care less who gets killed. That's another story, but it adds on to the one where we're going with. Syria has exposed the fraud. The $500 million to train the so-called rebels. Would they train a handful? And all the equipment that they had, they sold or gave away to quote, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, or Al Capone or whoever. So the whole thing in everybody's eyes is a total failure by the deeds, by the facts. Now, Russia going in. Russia's going in, I believe, because if you look at the news, you see very little blowback, real blowback coming from Europe. Germany's silent on it. Italy's silent on it. Greece is silent on it. The ones where the refugees are flooding into are silent on it because they know that Russia is going to put this thing down. They're going to put an end to it one way or another. So this is a very big point that's happening now. This is a turning point in America's foreign policy because the failure of Syria is in front of everybody's eyes. The failure of Afghanistan with the bombing of this hospital is in front of everybody's eyes. Oh, and remember the liar commander-in-chief, we're not going to have boots on the ground in Afghanistan? Remember when he declared an end to that war?
Yep.
These people are traitors. I want to see war crime tribunals for Obama, for Bush, for Clintons, for the Cheneys, for the Powells, for the Condoleezza Rices, the Susan Rices, and the Samantha Powers that keep taking us to war. The Wolfowitzes and every one of them. This is America. And we deserve to live by the honor of the Founding Fathers. No foreign entanglements. So going back, Rory, to where this is and asking you a question about Syria, this is a turning point event. The fraud of the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, and how they're slaughtering other people and having our people slaughtered is now apparent to everyone that's half awake.
Exactly. They've really done a marvelous job of making Putin look like a world leader instead of the war criminal that they try to paint him as, because the only targets, from the understanding that I have from the research that I've done, the news stories that I've read, he's targeting 100% ISIS targets and not missing by much. There's a few, there's a little bit of civilian deaths, but he's not bombing a hospital. Which is a total miss. And now to come to find out.
And they changed that hospital story, by the way, 4 times already.
Yes.
4 times. 4 different lies they keep feeding us. Hey, remember Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al Qaeda. Yeah, the one lie after another. They keep making it up.
Yep. Yeah.
So anyway, this is a turning point event. It's really big. It's very big.
Do you see with everything being fully exposed at this point, just like what you've just painted, the picture you've just painted, are your trends forecast? Do you see within that more exposure, like the financial crimes by the Wall Street Mafia and their Washington D.C. enablers? I mean, is that just wishful thinking on my part?
Well, that's wishful thinking because we don't have a government anymore of
true.
We the people. It's fascism. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. 4 words killed capitalism. Too big to fail. In capitalism, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as bailouts, loan guarantees, on and on and on. Quantitative easing, 0% interest rates to build the big guys and make them fatter. You saw that Ben Bernanke, B.S. Ben Bernanke, he came out recently and said that he was disappointed that there wasn't more prosecutions on Wall Street. He also came out and said that I love the name of his new book. These clowns, these guys, they get these huge book contracts after they shaft us. And then again, this is a private bank running our nation,
right?
And who is Bernanke working for now? Well, he's an advisor for one of Wall Street's biggest hedge funds, Citadel. So anyway, he came out and he also said he admitted that they underestimated the dangers building before the financial panic of '08. They underestimated it. We didn't underestimate it. I wrote about the panic of '08. We took the domain name out in 2007. We saw it coming. We didn't underestimate it. But the point I want to make, Rory, is, we underestimated it. But you know what? We're a bunch of arrogant people. We pretended we knew what we didn't know all along. And when anybody questioned us, we'd ridicule them. And we're still doing it. We don't know what we're doing, but we're going to pretend that we do. And then when I get a lot of money later and I write another book 10 years from now, I'll tell everybody how full of baloney we were, but I'll put it in nice language so I could get a big advance for the book.
White shoe boy language, as you like to call it.
That's it, boy. It's white shoe boys, and we get the shoe up you know what, because they're robbing. Look at all the pensioners. Look at all the people out there that used to be able to put money in the bank and get interest rates on it. You can't get them anymore because they have 0% interest rates now going on for 10 years. No, excuse me. They haven't raised interest rates in 10 years, 0% interest rate policy since 2008. So that means that once upon a time, people used to put money in a bank and get interest on it. But no, now they get nothing on it because we need 0 interest rate policy so the gamblers could keep borrowing money for free. Oh, we'll call them investors. We'll call them hedge funds. We'll call them high-frequency traders. We'll call them private equity groups. And that's what's driving the equity markets, while the rest of us suffer because bankers, nothing's really changed since Jesus Christ picked up a whip and drove him out of the temple. Exactly. The money changes. They just changed the name. People say to me, Mr. Celente, you should calm down. I say, listen, take it easy, Jack. If Christ could become violent and pick up a whip because of the money changes, I could become angry as they shaft me right in front of my eyes, and I don't like it.
Neither do I. And with that, there was which is a great segue into my next question. And Alex Silberman wrote a great piece for the Winter Trends Journal that came out earlier this year. And I wanted to ask you about retirement. And with everything that you have just pointed out, with the theft by the Wall Street gang, with their ZIRP, their zero interest rate policy, and talking about NIRP, a negative interest rate policy. I'm 53 years old, Gerald, and my wife and I, we save as much of our income each month as we possibly can, not in paper assets. And what do the trends point to regarding bail-ins or flat-out confiscation of 401ks, IRAs, state-sponsored retirement programs? I mean, should people be moving away from these vehicles, or what direction are the trends pointing?
Well, I can't give financial advice.
No, I'm not asking for that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, just to make that clear, because I don't want to, if anybody ever says that, Celente said, I want to always make that clear because I'm a target,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So don't give financial advice. Here's the way I look at it. You mentioned the 0 interest rate policy, negative interest rates possibly. I believe there's going to be inflation, not in a standard form of supply and demand. There's a deflation on that end, actually, as we see commodity prices now in general to 1999 levels because of the slowdown in the global economy. So it's not a supply and demand issue where there's too much demand and not enough supply, so prices go up. I look at it more as a devaluation of currencies. So let us assume, for example, that we're Brazilian. And in 1 year, we've seen our Brazilian real decline 40%. 40% against the dollar. Gold is based in dollars. If you were in Brazil and you own gold, wouldn't you rather have gold than real? I believe there's going to be a currency devaluation of our dollar. And that's where the inflation is going to come in. It's not going to be the standard inflation. It's going to be inflation. The price of the commodity won't change. You'll just take more dollars to buy them. And again, it goes back to the central bank. We've had virtually no inflation for the first 100 years of this country. Very low. The next 100 years after the central bank came into play, where we lose over 95% of the dollar's value.
Exactly.
It's a fact. So that's what we're going to see more of, a devaluation of the currency because of all of this quantitative easing, this cheap money printing. all of his zero interest rate policy, and the giant bubble that's been built. Look, you see the numbers coming out every day, virtually, or I should say every week. There's one organization after another lowering global growth forecast, whether it's the World Trade Organization. Just this week, the IMF once again lowered global growth for both 2015 and 2016. And they began the year by saying, we're going to see 3.5% growth. Well, now it's down to about 3%. And we're lucky if we're going to get that, because you're looking at recessions going on worldwide, from Russia to Venezuela. Chile, for example, they had like 5.3% growth for like 30 years in a row. And all of a sudden, with copper prices plummeting, it's down to below 2%. And then you have Colombia, Bolivia, and you go around the world, whether it's Malaysia with their ringgit getting bashed, the Indonesian rupiah, one after another. So you're going to see currency devaluations. The other big lie that's going on now, literally we saw it when Fed Chairwoman Yellen in September or mid-September, I believe it was September 17th, the Fed announced that they were not going. The Federal Open Market Committee announced they were not going to raise interest rates. 1 week later, at a speech at the University of Massachusetts, Yellen literally and figuratively choked. She choked, started coughing when she started talking about the possibility of raising interest rates by the end of 2015. Now, of course, 2 weeks later after that, the September job numbers came out, and they were way worse than anybody anticipated. It was 142,000 were created. They anticipated over 200,000. So then the markets went back up on the good news that the economy stinks and they'll keep this cheap money flowing. Now, the big lie is coming from the Fed, coming from the European Central Bank, coming from the Japanese Central Bank. Every one of them is that they have not reached the inflation point of 2%. We need 2% inflation. Who made this stuff up? Since when is inflation good for we the people? We have a deflationary cycle because there's too much product and not enough people with money to buy them. This is economics 101. It's not deflation. It's called depression, a depression of prices because people don't have dough to buy it. Am I making that up? No. Just look at the numbers. Just came out. 400 people in the United States, 400, are worth $2.5 trillion. The gap between the rich and the poor right now is wider than it was during the Gilded Age. And take it on a global level, 85 people have more money than 3.5 billion people.
Something is wrong there.
That's why you have this deflationary cycle, and every central bank is saying they have to hit their 2% inflation rate increase. No, that 2% inflation from the EU, that was put in place when the Euro group took place in 2000, was that they couldn't exceed that because inflation was running so high. That's where that 2% number came in, because they're all running 3%, 5% inflation. They're covering it up, of course. But that's what now they're saying, oh, deflation is bad. We need inflation. Who made this stuff up, and how do they get away with it?
Oh, these criminal banksters. Oh, my goodness. It always comes back to them.
It does.
Everything comes back to them.
Rory, I have 6 words that have killed America. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks. Let's start with Princeton. Woodrow Wilson, president of Princeton, may he rot in hell for taking us into World War II and having so many million people slaughtered and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of our men killed as well. For what? A war that was ready to end. A war that was, every historian writes, that was the most worthless war other than, of course, the ones that we have now in history. A war that destroyed Europe just as it was growing into new heights. A war, by the way, when you look at what's going on today, and we're talking about Syria, let's go back to World War I. Hey, Rory, give me a T-square and a ruler. We're going to make some countries up in the Middle East. I got one. We'll call it Syria. Another we'll call it Iraq. Hey, you know those criminal gang over there, the Saudi brothers? We're going to make a country for them too. We'll make them king. Everything that we have in the destabilization of the Middle East go back to World War I and the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. Thanks to England, France, and the other crazies that started another war that Woodrow Wilson got us into, that we had no business ever going into. The war was ready to end when the doughboys got turned into blood because of him. And by the way, that's when I really started learning to be against, and I'm not a pacifist, by the way. I'm a close combat practitioner. I had my own school for many years. Somebody tries to kill me, I'll kill them. But I, do unto others, have them do unto you. I mind my own business. Don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. So I'm not one of these guys, peace and love. And I stay out of other people's business. Going back to Woodrow Wilson and getting a Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks, just before he gets us into the war, what does he do? He helps create the Federal Reserve. On Christmas Eve, when Congress was just about emptied out, he shafted us with that one. The major election issue in every election virtually in the 19th century was that no central bank would control America and set its economic and monetary policy. It's against the Constitution.
Yep.
Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. Only Congress has the right, not the Federal Reserve, to print money and distribute it. So here we have Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks. Look at the cats in there, man. They're all Harvard, Princeton, Yale cats. From Bernanke, you just keep going up and down the list, up and down the list. And that's what's destroying this country. And they treat us like garbage because it's a neo-feudal society. You mentioned earlier about bankers. You didn't see any white shoe boys' heads roll on Wall Street. Not a one.
Not one.
But hey, Rory, you get pulled over. You went over that yellow line. You had your brights on and you didn't lower them when another car was coming out. Where were you? Do you have anything to drink? Get out of the car.
Exactly.
Let me see your license and registration. Don't give me any back talk. It's a neo-feudal society. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks. You had a political elite and the economic nobility. And the rest of us are just slaves in Slavelandia, unless we the people rise again and display the courage, dignity, and self-respect that we have within us to tell these people where to go and how to get there.
Well, and that leads me right to my next question. You just recently had the Occupy Peace organization to kick off last month. I believe it was in September. And from what I can understand, it was quite successful. And what's the next step, Gerald, for Occupy Peace? And how can people get involved? And what can people do to be part of Occupy Peace?
Well, the website is occupypeace.us. Just us, United States, nobody else. I'm up here in Colonial Kingston, New York. I'm looking across the street. There's the courthouse over here. This was the first capital of New York State. At that location, the Constitution was written. For New York State, 90% of America's Constitution, right out from that Constitution that was written over there. We launched Occupy Peace at the most historic four corners in America, the only place where there's a pre-Revolutionary War stone building on each corner. The seeds of democracy were sown here. And every one of the founding fathers, beginning with George Washington, a real warrior, a real commander-in-chief, not these little boys that play basketball, shoot pool, and play golf and drive pickup trucks and call themselves, I'm the commander-in-chief. There's a guy that fought. led the troops, a warrior. His farewell address, no foreign entanglements. Madison, Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, every one of the founding fathers, no foreign entanglements. So to honor thy founding fathers, what Occupy Peace is, this is a program for peace. This isn't, oming and praying for peace. It's an action plan. Number one, we want to close down all the bases overseas. Where you have over in 150 countries, well over 1,000 bases. Bring home the troops, secure the homeland. Put the troops to work on a Work Projects Administration to rebuild our rotted infrastructure. Rather than building highways and bridges in Afghanistan and other countries that we occupy. Matter of fact, I just read a number. We the people have spent more money with the military-industrial complex in Afghanistan to rebuild Afghanistan than we did on the Marshall Plan when adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
Yeah. So we put the troops to work rebuilding our infrastructure, and we forced Congress to vote to go to war. We're in Syria now, bombing Syria. Not we. The madmen are in Syria. I'm not part of that we. It's against international law. You can't go into another country and bomb them. The United Nations, they didn't even go to the Security Council charade. They're just bombing away. Congress didn't vote for it. Forced Congress to vote for any foreign entanglement. And being that Congress doesn't represent us, they represent the people that give them the most amount of money. The white shoe boys call it campaign contributions. Where I come from in the Bronx, they call it bribes and payoffs.
Exactly.
So being that Congress doesn't represent us, we want to have on each state ballot a referendum where we the people will tell Congress how to vote before they vote. Because we're the ones that pay for the war with our money and our lives. So that's what Occupy Peace is. We're just getting it moving. We need all the help we can get, donations, ideas. We want to have an Occupy Peace Tennessee, Occupy Peace Vermont, Occupy Peace New York, Connecticut, all under the umbrella of Occupy Peace US. Ralph Nader was one of the speakers here. Cindy Sheehan, Dr. Robert Thurman, Uma Thurman's father. He's a Buddhist dynamo. Gary Null, very big in New York. A load of great movies he produces. He's very much into health, fitness, and nutrition. One of his new movies out, anybody can go watch it on YouTube, Poverty Inc. This guy, he's another man, puts his money where his mouth is, does things on vaccinations, one movie after another, dozens of them, probably scores of them. He was another speaker. So every one of these speakers all said the same thing. It only takes Ralph Nader over and over and over, Gary Null over and over and over, Cindy Sheehan, Dr. Robert Thurman. It only takes a few of us. 1% could change it. Just like the 1% is in control, the 1% could change it.
Yep.
And if we all unite it's like going back to Franklin. If we don't hang together, surely we'll hang alone. So that's what Occupy Peace is. It's to restore the greatness of America and again make this the land of opportunity that has been robbed from us right in front of our eyes.
That's what we need. That is exactly what we need. And Samuel Adams, this is one of my favorite quotes, and I think I shared this with you last time that we spoke, and it rings true with what you just said.
I have it right in front of me after you gave it to me. Can I read it to you?
Absolutely.
It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men.
And I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because it's the truth.
I know, and I got it from you, and I repeat it all the time.
It is the absolute truth. And folks, the people out there that are listening, don't think that they have us. I mean, right now, they only have us because we think that they do. They don't. We have the numbers, and we don't need a whole lot of people. We just need to get together. We need to be together in order to take it to them. Because just like Samuel Adams said, it does not take a majority, but it takes an irate, tireless minority with a single focus of making a difference, making the change that we need and want so desperately. So, well, Gerald, is there anything else that we should get into?
Well, the other thing is, of course, the equity markets, and we're looking for an explosion to happen before the end of the year. They just can't keep this going. The only reason the markets are going up is because the Fed has indicated they're not going to raise interest rates till 2016. They're looking at March now. And this Ponzi scheme is about to collapse at some point. You know, it can keep going for so long. And you're looking at oil prices going back up on the great news that that they're going to cut back on supply. You know, and of course, they're coming out with estimates by the United States Energy Information Group that there's going to be higher demand next year for oil. How can that be when you see so many countries going into recession? So what we're looking at is the game is rigged. You know, the facts are there. Everybody knows them. They rig the Forex market, the currency markets. They rig the LIBOR rates, the interest rates. They're rigging the gold markets. There are investigations, of course, looking into it and uncovering it. But, of course, nobody will hang for it. Again, only we the little people pay for our crimes. They don't pay for theirs. So the whole game is rigged, and I think the unrigging is starting to happen, particularly when you look at China. And that equity market is down some 40% since it peaked in June. So look around the world, see what's going on. And Japan is in a recession despite all their quantitative easing, which in terms of GDP to the amount of quantitative easing is 3 times more they put into theirs. And still the country is now officially in a recession. So we believe that there's going to be a real equity market meltdown at some level before the end of the year. Before the end of the year? Yeah. Wow. That's our best estimate. You know, you never know, you know, of course, but that's right around the corner. Yep. So heed the warning there, folks. Well, we've been speaking with Mr. Gerald Celente of trendsjournal.com. And Gerald, just if you would, just remind everybody where you're at. Tell them about the Occupy Peace again. And yeah, Occupy Peace. OccupyPeace.us is the site. Our site for the Trends Journal is trendsresearch.com. And not only do you get the Trends Journal, which is, as you know, a 54-page full-color magazine with no ads, we also do a Trends Monthly, Trends This Week, and each weekday night, Trends in the News to put you ahead of the trends and on top of the news. And it's the only place we believe where you're going to read and listen to history before it happens. And we make it available, you know, it's very, you know, for less, I think it comes out to 27 cents a day. You know, it's way less than a cup of coffee. You get all that information. So we urge everyone to please help support us. We want to do our best to keep providing the best information that we can. And also, we understand that people are having difficult times, so we even have a discount request page. So for the people that, you know, are out of work or down on their luck, you know, we try to make it available to everyone. Well, that's very kind. And that's so anybody out there that's interested in history before it happens, that's where you'll find it. Trendsresearch.com, brought to you by the world's foremost trends forecaster, Mr. Gerald Celente. Gerald, I cannot thank you enough for your time today, and I certainly hope that you have a great afternoon and that we can do this again in the not-too-distant future. No, I'd love to, and thank you for all you're doing, Rory. Well, certainly appreciate it, and we'll talk with you soon. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.